King George V graving dock, also known as the No. 7 dry dock, is a former dry dock situated in Southampton's western docks. The docks was opened on the 26th of July 1933 when the royal yacht Victoria and Albert, with King George V and Queen Mary on board, broke a red, white and blue ribbon stretched across the entrance, and during the naming ceremony Queen Mary emptied a cup of Empire wine into the dock.
The association of my family with the great docks in Southampton water is, as you say, a long one. And I personally have a vivid recollection of that day in August '95, as it blew and rained all day, when I accompanied my father at the opening of the Prince of Wales's dock, the largest in existence at that time. It affords me, therefore, special satisfaction to inaugurate today this splendid addition to the dock system of the port. From the early days of our overseas trade, Southampton has held a foremost place in the commercial life of this country. This position it has retained as the result of wise and continuous development. It is as true today as ever that the welfare of this country is largely bound up with the prosperity of its seaborne traffic. Realizing the vital need for efficiency in our ports, as in all other requirements of our merchant navy, I look upon the opening of this, the largest graving dock in the world, as a good augury for the future of Southampton. I have much pleasure in declaring the dock open for use and in naming it the King George V graving dock.
The first ship to use the dock seen in the film was the White Star's Majestic in 1934. The dock was built as part of a westward expansion of Southampton docks, then owned by Southern Railway. There were several dry docks in the port, each larger than its predecessor, but a larger dock was needed to accommodate the new passenger liners which were coming into service, including the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. Before D-Day, the dry dock was employed constructing the Mulberry harbour, ready for Operation Overlord.
During 1943 and 44, hundreds of workmen arrived unheralded at Southampton docks. They were the scene shifters recruited to prepare Southampton's stage for a spectacle of unprecedented magnitude. Mulberry Port was being produced. The general idea of the Mulberry Port scheme was to prefabricate a harbour. Vast pierheads, pierced by mooring columns, were to be linked to the land by floating moles, and protected from the possibility of heavy seas by concrete breakwaters sunk at the required spot. By means of this artificial harbour, the indispensable doorway to Hitler's Europe was prepared for the passage of the invasion troops. As during the actual invasion the weather was unusually stormy, the importance of the breakwaters mentioned before cannot be overemphasized. The sections were constructed at various places as well at Southampton, assembled at the docks, and towed across the channel with the rest of the Mulberry Port components. These views of the breakwater caissons during construction give some idea of the size of the job in hand. Southampton was undoubtedly the choice of location for the work. Two of her dry docks, one of them the famous King George V graving dock, the largest in the world, became miniature shipyards on their own account. In the dry docks, as soon as work on the caissons had progressed sufficiently, they were floated out and completed in wet berths nearby.
Also featured in the film is a Liberty ship unloading M4 Sherman tanks.
In this dark hour of Britain's need, a strong and friendly hand helped her to regain a vantage point from which the future could be regarded with a greater degree of confidence. America, began to send over quantities of commodities necessary for the well-being of our peoples and for the effective maintenance of our war effort. The dock's nerve centers twanged with a transatlantic hum, its pulses quickened, and in a short time, East Land was in full flood. The United States undoubtedly meant business. The dark, swinging silhouettes of Southampton's cranes wove a crazy rhythmic pattern in the sky as they delved into countless holds, bit hungrily into the teeming supplies, and reared again with the life-giving fruits of Anglo-American cooperation hanging pendant in their steely jaws. It was an inspiring sight. For 2 years, Southampton dealt with this huge traffic, both at the quaysides and on the rails as well. In time, the nature of the American shipments changed to something clearly indicative of preparation for D-Day. England was now well populated with hordes of husky young Yanks. With them came their engines of war in staggering quantities. Southampton's quays and sheds were crammed with discharged cargoes, and all lines were cleared for this vast priority traffic. Other traffic, coal and such like, which had been growing in volume since the fall of France, was sent in coasters to other British ports. Vital supplies for the much-discussed Second Front continued to pour in from the other side of the Atlantic. To a Britain grim and sorely smarting with a sense of rebellion against the Nazi warlords, the apparently inexhaustible supply of American war power acted on the general morale with tonic effect. No longer was vague hope alone the booster of Britain's spirits. She had regained confidence, the confidence that one day democracy would triumph.
Talking about giant structures, let's take a look at the majestic Queen Mary, which, although she tends to be somewhat overshadowed these days by more modern liners, still makes a magnificent picture as she eases her way into Southampton after another Atlantic crossing. However, on this occasion, she's going into dry dock for one of her twice-yearly overhauls. The King George V dry dock is generally recognized to be the largest in the world. Yet even so, the task of positioning a giant liner so that she will rest snugly in her steel cradle is a matter of the highest skill. In fact, the ship must settle to within an inch of the calculated position. The dock has already been emptied of its 58 million gallons of water so that the cradle could be constructed.
In 2005, Associated British Ports agreed to terminate the lease on the dock to the then operator Ship Repairs A&P Group, following which the caisson gates and keel blocks were removed, thus converting the dock into a permanent wet dock. The dock was then used in conjunction with the bulk handling terminals at berths 107 to 109, operated by Solent stevedores. In June 2006, despite the removal of the gate, the dock and pump house were awarded Grade 2 listed status.